Alrighty, well, welcome to AP Statistics, perhaps one of the most relevant math courses you're ever going to take, and you'll see this a lot through our interactions in our classroom, but as far as the YouTube channel goes, it's mostly just to get the content down and some understandings. That way we can spend more time in class talking through the concepts and really like doing hands-on simulations and practice. So it's going to be up in the air which lessons you'll do at home versus which lessons we'll do together in class, but I just decided to record them all. So, you know, the more the merrier. But here in Unit 1, we are going to talk about analyzing univariate data. And there that word uni meaning one. So we're only looking at one sample data. Now, we need a few key vocabulary words here. So our first lesson is going to be on types of data. Now here's some key vocab that we need. Statistics is the science of data. Data analysis is a process of organizing, displaying, summarizing, and asking questions about the data. Individuals are objects described by a set of data. A distribution tells us what values a variable takes and how often it takes on those values. And then a variable is any characteristic of an individual. So you'll hear these buzzwords throughout the course. But today it's just a matter of getting these terms down. Now, there's plenty of data, but we're going to just use two umbrella terms. And we're going to use categorical and qualitative data as well as quantitative data. And maybe you've heard these words before, but in the context of this course, categorical and qualitative data are going to be types of data that places individuals into one or several categories. And so some examples could be your favorite food, your place of birth, your zip code, your preference on whether or not pineapple goes on pizza, etc. This is a status. You know, it could be your classification, what grade level you're in, are you in middle school, high school, undergraduate studies, etc. Things like that. So we count these values because you're responding to fit into one of these categories. So this is our countable data. Now, quantitative data, this takes on numerical values for which it makes sense to find the average. So for example, the average height of females in Houston, Texas, the average weight of males in the state of Texas, the average age at Fulshire High School, the average IQ of a Texas high school student, etc. So when we look at categorical and qualitative data, we're counting how many people fall into one of those distinct groups, whereas when we look at quantitative data, that numerical value means something. It means, you know, it's my height is specific to me, your IQ is specific to you. So that's a way to distinguish our data. You just need to ask yourself, can I take the average of it, or am I counting the amount of people that prefer this category? So those are some ideas there. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example, and then you'll go ahead and try one out on your own. So the FAA monitors airlines for safety and customer service. For each flight, the carrier must report the type of aircraft, the flight number, number of passengers, and whether or not the flights departed and arrived on schedule. Determine and classify the variables for each flight. So pretty simple. We need to talk about what are we looking at here, which variables. So the first one I noticed here was going to be type of aircraft. All right, so type of aircraft. Then we saw flight number. Then we saw the number of passengers. And I'm going to just leave it as pass. And then we saw the timeliness. So let's just ask ourselves, can I take the average or is it a certain category? So a type of aircraft, can I take the average aircraft? Probably not. I could take the average length of an aircraft, but I can't take the type of aircraft, right? So that keyword there, type, this would be indicative that this is going to be categorical data. All I know is big plane, small plane, Boeing 747, and I don't even know if that's accurate. Now, flight number. This is very misleading because sometimes you see a number, so you're thinking, oh, it's got to be quantitative. But again, can I take the average flight number? Well, if you were to go to an airport and you were to look at the arrivals and departures, you're going to see all sorts of flight numbers on there. And that flight number corresponds to its location of where it's arriving or departing from. So this could be flight number 1657. And okay, sure, 1,657 elephants, cookies, sticks of dynamite. No clue. But it's 1657. This is a flight to San Diego, California. So that flight number actually places it in a location. So I can't take the average location, but I can categorize my locations. Next up here, we have the number of passengers. Yes, no, like it is a passenger, it's not a passenger. Not really sure, but I can see that like flights to San Diego are going to have 200 passengers. Flights to Buffalo, New York might have 100, I don't know. But you can see here this numerical value is going to be specific to each flight. This is going to be quantitative. And lastly, whether or not the flight departed or arrived on schedule. I can probably take the average flight time, but I can't take the average yay or nay. So that's going to be categorical. So as you can see there, my thought process is very much just, can I take the average or am I counting it for a category? So what I need you to do now there are several examples for you to try out here. So here's another written case. Here are some other practice ones. And then here you have a table of values. And so what I need you to do now is I need you to pause the video and I need you to give this a whirl. Just try it out. In this course, we're going to be focusing on taking risk, which hopefully you're doing that in all of your courses, but specifically in AP Stats, it's really fun to see what you already know and how we can connect that to the new content. So this is meant to be low stress for you. Go ahead, pause the video, try it out, and then in a few seconds, we'll come back together whole group. So I need you to pause the video. Pinky promise you're going to pause it and try out the problems. All right, here you go. Pause video now. Okay, so I'm trusting that you paused and you worked through these, and if you didn't, well, you're dead to me, so it's fine. But here we are looking that in the spring semester, students are required to partake in course selection. A student must take the following into consideration: how many total classes a student wants to take, their endorsement track, the amount of AP, pre-AP, dual credit classes, and the course number in case the course has any prereqs. Determine what variables are being reported and classify the variables. So I kind of cheated here. If it's yellow, it's categorical. If it's green, it's quantitative. So for us, the endorsement track, whether you're humanities, arts, STEM, business, I don't know the rest of them, or the course number, that would categorize those courses and those tracks. Now, if I'm looking at how many total classes or the amount of specialized classes, I could take the average amount of classes that a student at our high school would take, or I can take the average amount of AP classes that a student would take. So again, I'm asking myself, can I take the average or am I organizing the data into different categories? Same thing here. So our quantitative variables were things like morning commute time, temperature of coffee, the number of siblings, your salary, your height. Whereas some categorical data included like your type of endorsement, your type of coffee, your area code, your jelly bean flavor, favorite color, your tax bracket, any dietary restrictions, etc. So again, just asking yourself, can you take the average or are you counting the amount of responses? Here are variables where the state, the number of family members, age, gender, identity, marital status, total income, and phone prefix. Our categorical variables were the state, gender, marital status, and phone prefix, and then our quantitative variables were number of family members, age, total income. And so you can see here that typically written responses, those are going to give me categorical data, and then numeric responses are typically going to give me quantitative data. The ones you need to watch out for are like area code, zip code, flight number, because even though those numbers, they're numeric and you might be tempted to say quantitative, I can't take the average area code. So what happens is that number there actually corresponds to a location or, yeah, typically a location, and locations are going to be categorical data. Now we're going to watch a TED Ed video on some misleading data. So this is actually going to be done in class, but misleading data is any data that is altered in order to honestly lie. You see it in the media, you see it on social media, you see it pretty much anywhere. 4 to 5 dentists recommend, or like if you take this pill in 2 months, you're going to be 30 pounds lighter, things like that. So some ways that we can mislead using data, because the data is true, but the way the data is captured or the way it's displayed might not be true. So it's honest data, but it's kind of lying to us. So on the y-axis, you can alter the heights on the graphs to make differences more severe. On the x-axis, you can alter the scale so that changes appear more extreme than they actually are. We have this other technique called cherry picking, where you select specific data points in order to hide important changes that occur in between those intervals. So whenever you see data, you always need to check 3 things. Check the labels and units. check the scale and the numbers that they're using, and then always look at the context. Because if I gave you a number like 500, what does that mean, right? Like $500 sounds good. 500 teenage deaths sounds pretty terrible. So you just always need to take into account the context. And so one silly thing you'll hear me do in class all the time is you'll give me a number and I'm going to ask you, okay, what? Elephants, cookies, sticks of dynamite. So all of the numbers we report in stats need to have some type of unit with it. So that was our first lesson on types of data. So the first half of this unit is going to deal with categorical data, and then the second half will deal with quantitative data. So stay tuned and learn more about the world of statistics. And that'll conclude our first lesson for AP Stats.